What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. Week 4 of the Autumn Internationals is now over. We're done and dusted with the autumn, or even the year of rugby, really, in terms of international rugby. And there was certainly quite a few big results in here. Certainly games I did not see going the way they did. Certain games finishing ways I don't think they should have. Get ready for some hot takes in this video, believe me. So what we do in these sort of roundup videos, we'll go through each game. We'll spend about a minute, 2 minutes on each game, sort of thoughts and things on the outcomes and so on. And then we'll move on. We'll talk about the fantasy, how that's got on, and the overall winner, as that's now come out this week. So, starting off with Scotland versus Japan. I thought this game was going to be a bit more of a walkover from Scotland. And in all honesty, the first half grabbed me that way. They were just sort of running rampant over them. They got 3 tries in. They were just sort of walking across the line. They weren't desperately pressured under defence. They were certainly managing to hold out. Some discipline, letting them down, penalties and so on allowed Japan just to keep ticking over that scoreboard and stuff. We know Japan manage a game quite well now. And they certainly managed to cling on. They went in that half-time and I was expecting a 40-point win to Scotland. I expected them to come out that second half, do it again, just keep absolutely slamming that team. And they came out in the second half and just, I don't know, gave up or just thought they'd done enough and just didn't fancy playing the rest of the game. Not sure what happened. I don't really think I saw a step up from Japan. We certainly saw them trying to utilise the ball through the backs a bit more and stop giving it to Scotland. Finn Russell had a weird second half, just constantly kicking it back to Japan as soon as they got a phase, 2 phases in. Not really sure what that scheme was. Japan managing to have a great comeback in the second half, and Scotland not really showing anything in that second half. In all honesty, I kind of feel like I wanted to see Japan win by the end of that second half. Unfortunately, not. Scotland winning that game 29-20, which was way closer than I think that game should have been. I don't think Gregor Townsend will be happy with that second half performance. But for Scotland overall, I mean, they've managed to get, what, 3 wins? No, how many wins have they got now? How many did they win? They beat Australia, they've beaten Japan, they lost to South Africa. Oh, and they beat Tonga in the first round. That's why I thought they played one more game. Yeah, so 3 wins out of 4, pretty good, and a close game against South Africa. I think they'll be pretty happy with their autumn series on a whole. On to the second game of the weekend, Italy versus Uruguay. Another game I expected to be Italy running rampant, absolutely dominating teams. We saw them really giving a go against New Zealand, going for it against Argentina. The scoreboard not looking good for them on their angle. But the final score in this game between Italy and Uruguay, 17-10. Which Uruguay must have just played out of their skin. I didn't get to see a lot of this game for the first half because I was watching the Scotland-Japan game. I caught the final 15 minutes live as it was going on. And Uruguay, in like the final 10 minutes, had like a driving maul setup to potentially draw this game. It was an astonishing game from Uruguay. Italy will be bitterly disappointed with the outcome of that game. A 7-point win over Uruguay. Which is a team Italy should be beating realistically all day long to be classed as the Tier 1 nations. Uruguay certainly are up there in terms of the Tier 2s. They're getting in. They beat Fiji in the World Cup. They've had a tough autumn. They lost another game. I can't remember who they lost that first game to. It was someone like Portugal, I think it was, or Spain. They're not on top form, and Italy to only beat Uruguay by 7 points is quite disturbing for me. And I think Italy will be really looking like they're in a lot of trouble going into the Six Nations, seeing how many other teams have really stepped up through this autumn series involved in the Six Nations. And Italy have lost every game, and they lost convincingly in every game. Also, they haven't lost every game. They lost both games against the Tier 1 teams. And then against Uruguay, they could have drawn that. That could have been a drawn game. I don't think Italy will be too impressed with that. I don't think their autumn series as a whole has gone brilliantly for them. For Uruguay, I think that's a good result. It was a real shame they couldn't clinch that game at the end. The driving maul setup, Italy are still good in terms of mauling against some of these Tier 2 nations and stuff. They really struggled to cope with that Italy maul a little bit. It would have been nice to have seen Uruguay get a draw here, actually. I'm not sure if the kick is necessarily up to the standard for the final kick and stuff, if they actually got the driving maul, was right into the corner. But I think for Uruguay, I think that's a very good result for them. There were a couple of games which, of course, we didn't get to see. Amazon don't show them for whatever reason. First game of that one was Georgia versus Fiji. which I just sort of wasn't going to watch because I assumed Fiji were going to win that 50-0 and just sort of destroy Georgia. We saw it in the Autumn Nation Series last year. hadn't played 5 games, and then they came in to play Georgia and just wiped the floor with them, really. I mean, it's not wiping the floor. They tend to be within 2 scores, the games, and Georgia certainly get points over them. But Fiji looked to dominate that game. And when that game finished, and I saw it was a 15-all draw, I want to find a clip of that game. I want to find a video of that game. I want to know what Georgia did. Georgia certainly haven't looked great in this Autumn Nation Series. They played a top-tier Ireland team, which was a bit of a shame for them. And then they played France. I think it was their second game. And they didn't look great against that either. Which is so they are struggling. But to do 15-all against a Fiji team that could have beaten Wales last week, I think is a really, really good result for them. So if hopefully I can find a sit down and watch that game, I'd really enjoy that one. And then the second one was Romania versus Tonga. Romania got... they lost. They lost to Spain, I think, 2 weeks ago. Tonga are losing to everyone, but they're trying to rekindle that team. They're trying to recreate a bit of a team. I thought Tonga might just steal this one. Romania winning this game 32-20, which is a convincing win and good for Romania. These are sides we tend to see get into the World Cup. But I think for Romania, that's a pretty positive job done by them. On to the next big game of the week, and then England versus South Africa. And what a lot of talking points there are in this game. England managing to beat South Africa by 1 point, 27-26. And what a flip-flop game that was. That was incredible. England out of the blocks really early. Manu Tuilagi getting in the corner, injuring himself in the process, having to get taken off. I thought that really dulled down the England attack as soon as you saw him go off. A couple of very young players now in this England team playing really well. Freddie Stewart had another really good game. I thought England looked brilliant in that first half. The second half I thought was awful. I told you there was going to be some hot takes there. I thought England were awful. There were penalties conceded all over the place. Their breakdown was an absolute mess. South Africa managing to come back all the way into that game and should arguably have won. Handré Pollard missing a couple of kicks you just sort of expect him to get would have sealed out this game. And I think there was some big calls in there as well. This game as well for me has cemented that Andrew Brace is the worst referee in international rugby, bar none. I've been under this belief for quite a while, ever since we saw the Autumn Nations Cup final last year. Who was in there? That was France and that was England. That was England as well. Maybe it's England. Maybe he just can't ref England teams. But there were so many things going on in this game by Andrew Brace that I thought were actually bad. Not like, oh, he's having a bit of an off day. They were genuinely bad. There was at least 3 or 4 times I saw Andrew Brace literally in the way of players, like at breakdown situations. I can think of 2 occasions. One was Marks, and one was an England player that got stopped, where he literally stood about 2 feet outside the ruck, and the scrum halves was picking up the ball and running around the ref, and teams couldn't get to him because he was in the way. I thought that was bizarre. His positioning was terrible. The 2 big talking points, I think, in this game would probably be the Khaleesi yellow card. I disagreed with that when watching that live. To me, I thought Khaleesi had his eyes on the ball the entire time, leapt into the air, went to grab the ball, and Freddie Stewart literally went into his arms. I think that was a rugby incident. Maybe you'd give a penalty. Maybe. I don't think you'd be seeing a yellow card. I was astonished by that call as a yellow card. England having 18 penalties, 14 at the breakdown, and we saw a single yellow card that wasn't even the worst out of the penalties. I thought that was an odd call that he didn't give a lot of penalties for that. I do think the penalty against Stain for dropping his leg on someone, I've seen a couple of people talk about that. I think that was a penalty. I think that deserved to be the penalty there. I don't think there was any need for Frans Stain to drop his leg on there. I think that was a penalty. That allowed England to actually take the lead in that game. And then right at the end, you had the kickoff that started off, and Eben Etzebeth got under the ball. And I also think that was a compete for the ball. I don't know why Eben Etzebeth would just take out... Was it Marcus Smith at the end there? I don't know why he would just take out the player. Why would he not want the ball back? I think that was contested in the air. And then it was followed again by South Africa having like 2 or 3 players over the ball, ripping the ball. Andrew Brace blew the whistle and then went back after blowing the whistle and said, we're going to check if it's a penalty or not. Which, you blew the whistle already. He did the same thing in the Autumn Nations Cup final in the 105th minute or whatever it was, where the kickoff happened and Makalou went up for the ball among 3 England players. The ball bounced out and Andrew Brace immediately gave it as a knock-on without any evidence from 40 metres away, and then went, well, we'll check if it was, and it ended up it wasn't a knock-on. And actually, that led to England winning that game. I think Andrew Brace really struggles under the pressure of these big games. I think they were all wrong. There was also, I saw people talking about that the England bench ran onto the field during live play. Although the whistle had gone, the clock was still ticking. It's still classed as live game. And I've seen games before where if substitutes and bench players come onto the field during live play, penalties get overturned, and I honestly thought England had thrown away that game right at the end by having their bench players run on the field to get involved in that final scuffle, we'll call it. They don't have fights in rugby anymore. But I thought Andrew Brace was going to overturn that. Eben Etzebeth walked up to Andrew Brace and said, their bench has run onto the field in live play. And Andrew Brace said, I didn't see it, and just turned around and walked away. Honestly, it's awful refereeing. It's not just Andrew Brace. The other officials should be getting involved in that as well. But I personally think South Africa will feel very hard done by that. I know we have both England subscribers and South African subscribers on the channel, so I'm interested to know what you guys think down in the comments, whether you thought that result was justified. I think that's a great result for England, and a lot of the youngsters in that will give a real boost to this England team, especially looking ahead towards that Six Nations. But I think there's a lot of contentious issues in there, which I think they'll be very happy to have got away with, and I think a bit of hard luck, unfortunately, to South Africa. There I am rambling about that one. We've got the next game coming up. Another rant coming here, probably. Wales versus Australia, 29-28. Another bare win for Wales against a 14-man team, 13 for 20 minutes of the game. Oh, it's getting hard. It's getting hard as a Wales supporter to enjoy some of these games. A win is a win, and they've had a win now both over Fiji and Australia, who are going to be their teams they're going to come up against in the pool stages of the World Cup. But wow, these games are getting very tough to watch. It does strike me as that Wales are going to struggle to play a 15-man team. They didn't look like they were under control that much against Australia when they had 15 men. They didn't look like they were that much in control against Fiji when they had 15 men. These red cards to me are saving Wales to no end. I thought Australia played really, really well. Again, we saw this when we had the Australia-France game back in the summer. That red card against Coriobetti really just boosted their spirits almost. They wanted to play that game much harder. They had a really good game in that one. I think they even won that one. And this one, they look to come back. The red card doesn't affect Australia. They will come back fighting. They had a couple of yellow cards that game as well. Wales's defence, ever since losing Sean Edwards, is struggling so much. Broken play defence used to be one of the best situations for Wales. They used to thrive in it, and now it just looks like their biggest Achilles heel. If you can break a line, we will make 50 metres. They struggle to stop you. I know there's a lot of injuries in this Wales team, but England, Ireland, Scotland are all putting out new, young players and are gelling them into a team and making them work well. And Wales are just scrounging for these wins. But like I said, a win is a win, and they'll be happy to have come away with a win. Their autumn tour went exactly how I thought it was. I think I called them to lose to New Zealand and South Africa and beat Fiji and Australia, but I certainly didn't see the games being as close as that. So Wales, happy with the result, not so happy with the game for me personally. On to another game I didn't see going this way. France versus New Zealand. What a game that was. Another one I didn't expect coming. We heard in the commentary talk time they were saying about when you're playing the All Blacks while they're playing white, it's not like you're playing the All Blacks, and they certainly showed it. France winning that game 40 points to 25 and looked brilliant for most of it. They really dominated that first half. The whole first half was France. They just took over everything. Entomac running brilliant lines. Damien Penaud on that wing was killing them. Dante up the middle, crashing it through. Gelange, Woki in the line-out. Just every player playing at top-tier rugby in that first half. New Zealand do what New Zealand do best, and they come back in that second half after you're like, we might as well turn the television off because France are going to run away with this one. New Zealand came back in and just took over that second half of that first 20 minutes, pulling it all the way back to within one score. And then the brilliance of Damien Penaud, we saw him get that interception, run over for that try. The shock on his face of receiving the ball was more than my face seeing him catch that ball. Got over for the try, and France sealing out that game. Well managed towards the end as well. Not afraid to take 3 when they needed to. Just keep that scoreboard ticking over. It's the only way to beat New Zealand. A brilliant, brilliant game for them. I was going to do a breakdown for that game like I did for the Wales-England one and the Scotland-Ireland one. But I don't know what happened. I don't know. If someone who's watched rugby for a long time, does videos on YouTube about rugby, I have no idea how France won that game. They just played brilliant rugby, and it doesn't necessarily need a better breakdown than that. The loose play was better than New Zealand. The open running play was so good. The offloading, the breakdown situation, just every area of rugby was so good for them. They'll look at that second half, first 20 minutes as a negative for them. But I think overall that's about as good as France could have expected to play, especially when they barely beat Argentina, to me, in their first game, and moving all the way to beating a New Zealand team that took that loss to Ireland. Obviously very tough. They're maybe looking a bit tired. There was talk about fatigue of some players. There's not an excuse. France played brilliant in that game, and I think they absolutely deserved that one. And then the final game of the weekend, Ireland versus Argentina, that we all expected Ireland to win, mainly because of that win over New Zealand. We expected them just to keep it going, but not to that extent. 53-7. The final score in that one, and Ireland just all over the park, just dominated. I at no point thought Argentina were going to win that game. I thought Ireland were maybe a bit sloppy in certain areas, a lot of changes coming in. People like Conor Murray coming in. In all honesty, Conor Murray needs to watch out. That 9 shirt is up for grabs now. Gibson Park played really well in his game, especially against New Zealand. Craig Casey, the speed that ball comes out of that ruck is just unbelievable. He just gets that out and ships it on. The Ireland team is gelled. They're looking really good. For some reason, the talk is still around England or France to win the Six Nations. I genuinely already am thinking if Ireland can continue this on, Ireland should be looking for a Grand Slam year. They look brilliant in every area. People that are playing superbly well. Van der Fleer, Tyg Byrne, Keelan Doris has come out of nowhere as well. He had a really good game. So many of this Ireland pack really gelling well together and just dominating games as you want to see from an Ireland pack that has the talent in them. Really, really good game for them, and a really, really good autumn series for them. But there we have it, guys. That is going to be the roundup for week 4. I probably rambled about a couple of games way too long than I should have. I always drop these hot takes down in these videos. You know this. I just say what I see as I see the games going on. But that's a little bit of a roundup for week 4. So we'll talk about the fantasy as there's a lot of big talks happening in the Superbru this week. So for anyone who hasn't judged by the video that's already been going on here, I got a lot of results wrong. It did not go the way I thought it was going to at all. I'll chuck it up here for you guys, the round as it's gone on. So at the top here, Bagging Machine, which is a great name, makes me think of someone like killing it in Morrison's, like chucking things in, like those American speed bagging contests. Out there on 10 points, just ahead of everyone. Really, really good round for you. We have a triple second place between Dave, Wilford Rice and Ant1, all on 8.5. Lord Nicholas there coming in technically third, I guess you'd say, on the 7.5. Some other scores in there, and then all the way down the bottom in last place. It's me because I got so many of those games wrong, which of course meant I've thrown away the Superbru win. So in terms of the leaderboard, I'll chuck it on screen for you guys. Yeah, Dave out there on a clear victory, so well done to you, Dave. 30.83. You had a really good round in that final round as well. You got me there on 27 on my 4 points for round 2. I did think this was going to be a really fun round. I'm so glad we went down opposite routes. You went for France, I went for New Zealand, you went for England, I went for South Africa. I was like, this is great. Whoever calls these correct wins outright. And it was you all day long, so fantastic picks there. Bowie coming in on very close third place, 26.33. If you got one more bonus point anywhere over the 4 weeks, would have taken that second place away from me. And Wilford Rice coming in there again with a close 4th place. The only minor victory for me, I guess, is that I get to beat Sam, finally. I finally have beaten Sam down there in 8th on 23.33. There was a couple of rounds that didn't go quite well for Sam. And Banana down there in last place on 20, but Banana, I've seen some of the pics you've had. They've been brilliant to watch. Wales to win by 120 was my personal favourite. But overall, yeah, I think that went the way it was. I had a terrible last round. So congratulations to Dave on winning this one. I still don't get to win predictor on my channel. I've finally beaten Sam. Oh no, for nothing, because Dave managed to take it away. In terms of fun notes for it, me, I got 4 correct out of every game. Terrible round for me. That's probably the main note on that one. Bagging Machine had a really good round, getting all 3 calls that I got wrong. Got Romania to win correct, which was a really hard game. Not a lot of people got that one right. France to win and England to win. So there's your triple header. That's why you ended up top of the round. And finally, the final note. No one saw Fiji losing that game or drawing that game. Everyone picked Fiji to win by a good margin there. But it ended up being a draw. But there we have it, guys. That will be the end of the Fantasy League for this year, at least. Of course, we will probably do another one of these when we get round to doing the Six Nations. So thank you to everyone that does get involved. I really enjoy doing these. I really enjoy getting to see some of the scores and see some other people's views and see that some people know more about rugby than me. It's great fun. Start your own channel, Dave. Get on with it. So we can all just copy your answers. But no, it's a lot of fun. We will do another one for these for the Six Nations. The Six Nations may also do the Fantasy League, the proper one where you pick players as well, so we'll have to keep an eye out for that. That's the one I personally enjoy more because you get to pick actual players rather than just generic scores, which is a bit open-ended because it's quite hard to judge. He says in second place and he's obviously a sore loser. But thank you to everyone that's got involved. Congratulations to Dave on winning that one. But I hope you've all enjoyed this autumn series, guys. I will probably put all these videos into one big playlist in case you fancy going back and watching all these videos. I might go back and do a look at the prediction videos that I did before the series kicked off, because there's a couple of results I've changed along the way after I saw the teams. So we might go back and do one of them. And then, of course, we will be having the Six Nations and stuff. So if you enjoy these videos, you enjoy this sort of style of stuff, just a little bit of a laid-back chatting about rugby stuff, make sure you subscribe to the channel just to keep up to date with all the latest videos as they come out. And if you've enjoyed this one, make sure to drop it a like. And thank you to everyone who's joined us for the autumn series. I'll see you all for real rugby time for the Six Nations and maybe some video game rugby in between before then. I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.